good evening from wherever you are. Today we're going to present a customer success story on an upgrade to HP Service Manager 9.3. I am your co-chapter leader. This is Mary Kay Peterson of the HPSM SIG. I'm also the Director of Service Management and Enterprise Security at Mentor Graphics. Today is a part of a three-part webinar series. We started our series with an overview of the HPSM and HPAM 9.3 products by HP. We followed that with a customer success story, an upgrade story to HP Service Manager 9.3. Today we're going to talk about Asset Manager 9.3. And coming up next in the coming months, we're going to get to meet the developers for Service Manager and Asset Manager. This is brought to you by the HPSM SIG. If you aren't currently a member of this group, I encourage you to go out to vivitworldwide.org and check us out. Today's presenters are, first of all, Marla Hay, who actually works in my organization. She's an IT business system analyst working at Mentor Graphics, and she was instrumental in the upgrade to Asset Manager at Mentor. Also with us is Richard Vanderhoek, who's a solution architect from Evergreen Systems. Evergreen Systems is our partner VAR that helps us with HP Asset Manager. And there's a picture of myself. Today's session is being recorded, and it's going to be posted on the Vivit website, available for all supporting members. If you have questions, I encourage you to type them into the Q&A pane on the GoToWebinar panel, and at the end we'll save some time and try to address your questions. For any questions that we don't get to, we will follow up and post an FAQ on the Vivit website. So let's get started here, and I need to change my presenter. To Marla.
Thanks very much, Mary Kay. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yep.
Great, thank you. So thanks very much. As Mary Kay mentioned, I'll be speaking today with Richard Vanderhoek from Evergreen Consulting about the Asset Manager 9.3 upgrade. Today we'll be going through an introduction of myself and Richard, a little bit about what each of our companies do, and then I'll be telling you about asset management at Mentor Graphics, how we utilize HP products to further our asset management program goals. And then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the 9.3 upgrade, including the steps we took to complete the upgrade, the problems we had, how they were resolved, and any lessons learned, as well as some next steps for the program. So as Mary Kay mentioned, I'm Marla Hay. I work at Mentor Graphics as an IT business systems analyst. I've been at Mentor Graphics for about 8 years now, although I've been in IT only for the last year. Prior to IT, I worked in the customer support division in a number of roles, and I moved over to IT to start working on that asset management program, and I worked on this program through the upgrade, and I'm now working on enterprise monitoring. So some of the asset management stuff I'll be telling you about is will be brought to you by courtesy of our program manager, Brenda Millum, and the current analyst on asset management, John Goldstein. So a little bit about Mentor Graphics. Mentor Graphics is an electronic design automation company, which effectively means that we provide hardware, software, and services to customers to help them design and develop electronic products. And we're specifically focused in the areas of board and chip design. So Mentor is headquartered in Wilsonville, Oregon, which is a suburb of Portland, although we have offices all over the world and over 5,000 employees. We just celebrated our 30-year anniversary this last year, and we've hit $915 million in revenue over the last 12 months. So I will let Richard take it away.
Good morning. My name is Richard Vanderhook. I'm with Senior Consultant Solution Architect with Evergreen Systems. Been with Evergreen for a little over 3 years. I've got over 11 years experience in IT asset management, starting with creating an asset management program at Fidelity Investments. Was there for a number of years before going over to ACS. Was there for a couple of years creating and building an asset management program that was focused on supporting customers that outsourced their data center to ACS. My focus area is around process development and architecture. So really understanding how do we fit Asset Manager into existing processes, what processes need to be modified, how do we make the process really support the technology, and then how do we fit the technologies together to really paint a complete picture of the IT assets that a company has. Next, Evergreen Systems is based out of Sterling, Virginia, and we're a HP partner. Our objective is to become strategic partners with our customers, much in the way we have with asset management with Mentor Graphics. We believe in partnering with our customers. Our focus clientele is the Fortune 1000, and our focus area is value. How do we help customers derive value from the investments they've made in the tools and technologies? So our focus areas or our technology areas are business service automation, client automation, IT service management, which is HP Service Manager product, IT asset management, configuration management, and then automated network management. So feel free to visit us at our website at evergreensys.com.
Okay, thanks, Richard, and feel free to jump in on any of the upcoming slides wherever you would like to. So I'll talk a little bit about the tools that we upgraded during this project. I think most of you are probably familiar with these. In addition to upgrading to new servers, new Windows servers, we also upgraded Asset Management, Connected, and DeeDeeMi as part of the Asset Management program. So now I'm going to tell you just a little bit about how Mentor utilizes HP tools to assist in the Asset Management program. We'll go through each of these bullets you see here. Site inventory, basically just what exists and where is it. Showback is essentially how groups are utilizing our physical assets. Asset life cycle is pretty self-explanatory. And then the last two are really in the infancy stages of development in the Asset Management program. Here's a little bit about what we have current state. We've got about 18,000 assets, 15,000 of which have been scanned in the last 60 days. And we do tend to have more desktops and laptops, although you can see they're split fairly evenly between desktops, laptops, servers, and virtual machines. You'll see as I'm going through these slides, these images on the right. These are all taken from our ClickView reports. ClickView is a business intelligence tool that we have used to develop reports out of Asset Manager. It's been a really nice tool to have. It pulls data that's been transformed directly out of the Asset Manager database to really give us an easy way to slice and dice everything that's coming out of Asset Manager. So the first way we're utilizing HP tools for asset management is to do site inventory. So site inventory is really just what exists at each site and what are the details of the assets that are there. And so this is important for disaster recovery and also to be able to assess the status of upgrades and other initiatives. And you'll see, for example, we've got this operating systems image that shows the results of our recent Windows 7 upgrade initiative. Or, for example, if you wanted to determine which browsers need to be supported for internal applications, you could easily determine what browsers are in use by what % of the company. Another thing that we are doing with asset management is showback. So this started as a project to show divisions what we were going to be consolidating into 2 new data centers. And since then it's evolved into a way to demonstrate the cost and the utilization of assets across various sites, and also gives us the ability to categorize assets, and eventually may allow us to show divisions and product groups really how much it costs to support and maintain the assets that they're utilizing. One really great thing that HP allowed us to do is DeeDeeMi has the ability to read data from text files that are directly on the machine. So we were able to load text files with data that allowed us to tag machines with information like what division does this machine belong to, what product does it use for, who supports it, and you can see this bottom image down here is a little slice of how we're using that information. It's really helped us to be able to determine what groups are utilizing which assets, and that's just a really cool feature of DeeDeeMi and Asset Manager to be able to support something like that. Okay, asset lifecycle. This is just the ability to manage assets from their request to their disposal, and this is really one of the main goals of asset management, is just to provide the ability to know what you have and to know what you need in order to make better decisions about how to plan ahead and how to make purchases. Okay. So one new way we're using Asset Manager is for contract management. This has been a really cool tool of asset management. We've been able to consolidate all of our contracts into a central location, and Asset Manager has these great workflows that allowed us to set up notifications that go out to contract admins, contacts, and cost center managers whenever contracts are approaching expiration. And that's really helped us to eliminate any inadvertently expiring contracts. And Richard did an awesome job setting this stuff up. Okay. Another new initiative that's sort of in the development stages still is warranty information. And this is the ability to obtain warranty information through vendor feeds. This just gives us some additional information on when warranties will expire on the assets that we have. Also on the roadmap is software asset management. This is the ability to, this will help us with the ability to respond to audits and comply with licensing agreements, or determine license utilization for planning. And these are a couple of initiatives that Brenda Mellum, our program manager, is working on, and she helped me put together some of the information on where this is headed. So on to the upgrade goals. The primary goals of this upgrade were to really further the goals in the roadmap. Particularly software asset management. The upgrade would allow us to utilize enhancements in the templates for software asset management. In addition, we're looking forward to utilizing the improved web client and single sign-on, which is something new with Asset Manager 9.3. And it also gave us the opportunity to upgrade our hardware to the Windows 2008 platform. So I'm going to go ahead and step through kind of the nuts and bolts of the upgrade. So first, this is just a glance at what our pre-upgrade state looked like. We had Asset Manager 5.2 connected at 4.10, DeeDeeMi 7.6.1. We're on Windows servers 2003. And all of these are virtual machines, and I've just done a little diagram here of kind of what the machine data and then what's been installed on each of those machines. So the first thing we did was obtain new hardware. So we got all new Windows 2008 servers. We have a fully replicated QA environment and a partially replicated dev environment. We basically just don't have the web server that's at the bottom of this image here. And again, these are all virtual machines. They all have 100 gigs of disk space and various gigs of RAM depending on the requirements listed in the upgrade documents. So the first thing we did was prepare the machines for installation. We changed some of the security settings. One thing that that we found was that Windows 2008 has a lot of security that Windows 2003 doesn't. So we did a few things here. We turned off the server firewall, and we temporarily turned off the user account control settings. And I'll get into that a little bit later why we did that, but that's an interesting little anecdote. And we didn't make any changes to the database server since we weren't really, there wasn't a lot of installation on that aside from the SQL Server. So why did we turn off user access controls? Well, as we were installing, it turned out that we were not able to launch AutoPass, and we just about ripped our hair out trying to determine what the problem was with this thing. So we've got everything installed, and now we just need to put in the license keys, and we can't get the thing to open. And so we changed versions of Java. We ran things as the administrator, and eventually John Goldstein had the brilliant idea to try turning off the UAC, and that did it. So he's great with Windows administration stuff. So thank God he was able to figure that out, and we were able to move on with the installation process after a couple of frantic days. So the next step was to install software and licenses. This was super easy. I mean, HP could not have made this easier. Everything uses an install wizard. Once you get the licenses on there, everything's a piece of cake. We also installed Java JREs or JDKs depending on the server. We did the JRE on the DeeDeeMi server, and we did JDKs on the Asset Manager Connected server. We have Asset Manager and Connect installed on the same server, and also on the Asset Manager web server. And we also installed Tomcat 6 on both the Asset Manager Connected server and the Asset Manager web server, which it turned out we may not have needed it on the Asset Manager Connected server, and I believe HP does not recommend doing that. But I'll get into the reasons for that in a little bit. So the next step of the upgrade was to create the database for DeeDeeMi. This was an extremely easy upgrade. So we just, all that was required was to copy the old database into a restore folder and restart DeeDeeMi, and it automatically upgraded the database. So this was super easy to do. Everything worked as expected, and we were able to log in with the credentials from the previous database, so there weren't even any changes that we needed to make there. Creating the database for Asset Manager is significantly more complicated. We essentially created like a database shell in our database management system and connected it to Asset Manager, then restored the database from our old 5.2.1 version, and then through the Asset Manager Application Designer actually converted that database, and then ran a little wizard to get everything set up to work with 9.3. So we had a few bumps in the road on this one, primarily just small errors that showed up during that conversion process that were pretty easily rectified. One thing that I learned was that that conversion and that wizard process, that last step, can take a long time, and it looks like it may be choking, but it's actually just taking a significant amount of time to complete. And then after that, we just started and connected the automated process manager.
Just one quick note here, Marla, for the folks. There is some data sensitivities when you're running the conversion wizards. I know, for example, if you have a caret in any the caret character in any one of your fields in the database, you will receive an error. So there's potentially some data cleanup that has to be done. But as Marla said, it will spit out some errors and tell you what's going on. You just need to be careful and take the extra time, walk through those, evaluate any errors, and make sure they're resolved before you move forward.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, I found that the error messages that get spit out in that process were pretty clear. Like sometimes you can get some error messages that are just mean absolutely nothing, and you just are going to Google it and hope something comes back that makes sense. But in this case, it seemed like Richard said, they're pretty straightforward errors. So it's not a totally simple process, but it is pretty intuitive walking through the problems with it. Okay. So the next thing we did was convert the connected scenarios. This is essentially meant just configuring each endpoint to work with the new DeeDeeMi information and with the new asset manager information, and then setting those scenarios up in the service console and setting them up to run on a schedule. And John Goldstein, the current business analyst on asset management, also worked on improving some connected scenarios coming from Service Manager for this section. So it was a good opportunity to really clean up and improve our connected scenarios. Okay, the next thing we did was converting the workflows. And Richard, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. So these are some workflows. One of them, or a few of them, Marla mentioned earlier, supporting the contract module or the contract management process. So they were notification workflows. So we just copied the mail INI over to the new server. And there wasn't any changes needed for that. I went through independently and validated that the actions would execute properly. And this is as much just to make sure that or one other verification that everything upgraded properly, that all the fields that we had, any fields that we had added to the contract table were all there in 9.3. Then within the development environment, we scheduled a test run of all of the workflows, and then we turned them on. And once the upgrade was in production, we scheduled all the workflows through the automated process manager.
Thanks. Yeah, Richard's great at just making things magically work. Okay. So the next step was to go ahead and start the scan. So we went ahead and copied the certificates from the old DeeDeeMi server to the new server. We tested DeeDeeMi with a few agents, and then we started scanning the systems. And once we were done with the test in development and QA, we turned off everything but pings and reduced the ping rate. And we did that because eventually DeeDeeMi will expunge data. I think it's after a year from the system. So we wanted to make sure that we were at least still pinging things in those systems so that we could, so that the data would remain in DeeDeeMi. And then of course we turned off all the scans from the old system. And manual scans, of course, we had to update those scan files and have everyone who was using a manual scan upload a new scanner. This ended up taking up a pretty good chunk of time because, as it turned out, the old way in which we were accepting manual scans was a post via HTTP. So we had a web server set up on our asset manager server, which is why we had Tomcat installed on that server as well as the JDK. So we weren't able to get manual scans to come through via the Tomcat server, so then we tried ISS, and that didn't work either. And eventually found that HP does not want you to have any kind of web server installed on that asset manager / connected machine at all. And it turned out that we were able to actually use the store and forward server, which is a web server, to accept scans, and we just basically forwarded the scans to the same machine and just put them into the correct directory. So the store and forward server ended up being a great way to accept manual scans via HTTP, but it took us a little while to get there. So finally, here's a look at our post-upgrade state. You can see it looks similar to the pre-upgrade state, except all new servers, new software, and we have this new Asset Manager web server that we will utilize for the to do the web interface to Asset Manager. So lessons learned from this project. One was a license launch issue. I really had wished I had a better understanding of Windows 2008 servers before I'd started this upgrade, because the license launch issue was a big stumbling block to have right at the beginning. It wasn't clear if it was the product or if it was Java or if it was the servers, and I think better understanding the caveats that come with Windows 2008 security would have really allowed us to get through that with a little less consternation. Yeah, loading data later. This is a good lesson. I actually ended up doing the Asset Manager database conversion a couple of times because I had done the conversion early on, and then by the time we actually had all of the scans functioning and working, we really needed to do the overlay again. And so it probably was only necessary to do a test version of Asset Manager to ensure that the connections were working properly, and then save the production overlay for the very end, because that database conversion can be a little bit onerous. Okay. Yeah, another lesson learned, the store and forward server, it would have been nice if we'd started with this server instead of the installed web server, which was the old way that we were doing it. And I guess I'm not 100% sure how we would have known to use that if we hadn't kind of stumbled on this as an option after we'd exhausted all of the options that had worked in our previous installations. But this would have been good to understand before the upgrade started. And finally, another lesson was to prepare for an increase in data. This upgrade really improved the ability to get data out of Linux machines, and it resulted in just a massive amount of data coming from the software for Linux machines, and so the software updates were actually turned off in order to reduce the load. And this has accelerated the look at software as a managed process. And that's something that Brenda and John have been working on, and Richard. So what's next? So you heard a little bit about the roadmap earlier, and this is courtesy of Brenda Mellum, who's the program manager for Asset Manager, or Asset Management. And Richard, I think you could probably talk a little bit about this if you would like, because I'm kind of just going off of what I've understood from Brenda, since I'm not really in the asset management space anymore. But the things that are on the docket include implementing software asset management as a managed process, which I mentioned earlier. Implementing the warranty and ship feeds, which are in the development stages right now, and then configuring the web client to really utilize the improved web client that's associated with Asset Manager 9.3, and it really is a better web client. It looks pretty good, and it seems pretty intuitive to use. Richard, do you want to add anything on there?
Yeah, just a little bit. The software asset management, we're leveraging the SAM best practice packs that HP provides for Oracle and Microsoft. So those are the two areas of focus right now. There was Mentor had a very manual process, essentially a spreadsheet, which I think most companies seem to be run on, for tracking all of the Oracle licenses. And they had a good process around it, but what we've done, or what we're in the process of doing, is converting all of that into Asset Manager, and then using the managed software scenario from DeeDeeMi, so that we're only importing the Oracle installations and Microsoft installations that we care about. The Linux does start pulling in. I think when I looked at it, it's been a little while since I looked at it, but it was averaging around 250 software installations per device. So as you can imagine, it doesn't take a very large environment for your installations to get out of control. So leveraging what HP's provided for calculating compliance, along with the managed software connected scenarios, really helps companies get their arms around it. And the warranty and ship feeds, we've got a couple of different vendors that we're in the process of doing that with. And the idea there is just so that we know about the shipped feeds, the shipment files, so we know about hardware that's coming into the environment before it actually hits a dock. So we can start tracking the assets as early in the life cycle as possible, and not wait until it's just put on the wire and discovered by DeeDeeMi.
And this is Mary Kay. I'm the director of this function. The other thing that the warranty ship feeds allows us to do is to understand the age of our assets. So the vendors are good about shipping us serial number information. We can match that with the assets on the wire that we can already discover, and now start forecasting end of life of assets. And so for the coming year, I can forecast what my capital needs may be based on assets aging off the books. Additionally, I want to make a comment about showback. We started by just trying to understand what assets we had in the environment as we consolidate to 2 regional data centers that we are in process of building. And the program went so quickly from showback to chargeback. I'm not exactly sure when the decision got made, but the data that we were able to produce was such high quality compared to what accounting had access to with financial systems. It proved to be a much more accurate way to charge engineering exactly what they were using. So certainly there were some divisions delighted that their bill went down, and other divisions that had to accept the fact that they cost more to the company than what they might have previously understood. So it's a great story of using data to make business decisions.
Okay, thanks. So I think that brings us to the end of our presentation.
Okay, great. So we've got some questions queued up here, and so I'll launch the questions, and Marla and or Richard can answer. I think I can actually answer the first one, which is what operating system was the upgrade done on? And I think from what I saw, it was Windows 2008.
That is correct.
All right. Next, did you implement software asset management and discovery with DeeDeeMi? And if so, did you discover virtual machines?
We are discovering virtual machines, and software asset management is kind of the on our roadmap, but Richard, maybe you can talk a little bit about where we are with that. I think you kind of mentioned that on our last slide.
Yeah, so this is part of just building better processes and then using the technology in DeeDeeMi and the best practices that HP's provided to really get your arms around all of the software. But specifically with VMs, this is where process comes in. So we've got all these great tools that can do great things for us, but VMs, in the VM space, it's so easy to bring one up, take it down, and there's not really any, DeeDeeMi doesn't tell us necessarily when something goes away. It just starts aging. So I recommend every company implement a business process around how do we notify the appropriate group, the software group, that a VM is on the line or is now been taken offline, so that licenses can be recovered, statuses can be updated in Asset Manager, and you don't just end up with a bunch of installations out there that are aging and you don't quite know what to do with them or where the VMs went.
Okay. The next question is what are the database sizes for Asset Manager for Dev, QA, and production?
That is a good question. Let me take a look, and I'll send an email out on that one.
Okay. Next question is why turn off the firewall?
Oh, this was to allow HTTP transfer of scan files to Asset Manager. And I'm not 100% sure that it was necessary. It was part of the troubleshooting to get the HTTP scan files over to our Asset Manager server. So I haven't gone back and tried it with the firewall on, but we disabled it to just eliminate that as another source of possible issues. And because we're doing only internal transferring of files, and we already have security around our servers and around our network, it seems superfluous to have it, and it could have been an additional problem in getting the files to come across.
Did we turn it back on?
No, they're off right now.
Okay.
But they're off to internal users, and it really is something that wasn't standard on the other our other server implementations, and so it is a superfluous thing to have a firewall stood up. It's inside your network and for receiving other files from inside your network. So we could turn it back on and see if it causes problems, but I wouldn't see the reason why.
And just for people's information, we do have a firewall secure cell around this business data center,
right.
Which is how we secure it. Next question is, I think someone's surprised that just a mere database restoration from 5.2.1 to version 9.3 was enough to migrate the data.
For DeeDeeMi or Asset Manager?
Doesn't specify. 5.2.1 was Asset Manager, I think, right?
Well, so Asset Manager wasn't just a restore. It was a kind of a tedious process, and we can go back and look at that again. So for DeeDeeMi, yes, like DeeDeeMi does it by itself. It's amazing. You literally load the data into a folder titled Restore, and it does it for you. With no problems whatsoever. This was such a piece of cake. All we had to do was restart DeeDeeMi to get this to work. So okay. Asset Manager is different, though. Asset Manager, I created a shell database in the database management system, connected it to Asset Manager, created the SQL Server connection, and created a database schema in Asset Manager, and then restored the shell database from the old 5.2.1 database. So now we basically have a database that's connected to the new 9.3 Asset Manager with old 5.2.1 formatting and data. And then that data goes through a conversion process that's done via the application designer and Asset Manager. It's a two-step process. It's a conversion, and then you run through a wizard that moves to the new schema and reviews all of the data. And so it's not simple. It's it's doable, and I think that the error messages that we receive going through the process were straightforward, and after a while, after doing it a couple times, you get pretty comfortable with it, but it certainly wasn't just a restore.
And I know you'll answer the question about our database size, but do you recall how long that conversion took?
All of the steps took about a half an hour to do, but then that last little conversion step was taking like I think it was under 2 hours, but it was more than 1 hour.
Okay.
And that's going to be completely dependent on database size as well.
Right.
Sure, you bet. How customized was your database?
We had some custom fields, but we didn't have a ton of custom tables. I don't know, Richard, do you recall how much kind of customization we had other than a few? I mean, I added fields to the database, but I didn't really change the schemas or anything dramatically.
Now, there's one custom table, that's the AP range table, and that's used to identify asset locations by the subnet that they're in. And yeah, just maybe a dozen off the top of my head, a dozen new fields. So it's pretty close to out of the box.
Okay. The next question is any papers regarding the work on scenarios between service manager and asset manager? And actually, our service manager and asset manager instances are not linked at this time. I'm sure there are papers on the HP website. I guess that's where I would look. The next one are procurement requests entered directly into Asset Manager or via another tool such as Service Catalog. If another interface, specifically Service Catalog, were there any issues encountered? And again, I'll answer this one. We chose to, as a company, we are an SAP shop, and so our procurement cycle starts with SAP procurement, and in front of that we have a website, an intranet website we built with Drupal that is our service catalog, and that's proved to work for us very well. The next question, do you do agent or agent list discovery, and what lessons were learned from that experience?
We do discovery with agents and without agents. We have manual scans for agent list discovery. And lessons learned are that users who don't use agents have a more difficult time with things like upgrades because there's really some work involved to get them onto the new scan versions.
Because they had to do a manual upgrade?
Right, because they had to actually go out and get the new scan file, upload it, and then apply whatever scheduling they were using to get the manual scans back to us. And for some people, that was hundreds of machines that they had to update. So we had a few groups that were working on scripts that would update the manual scanners on their systems for them.
I would say the other lessons that we learned, because we did DeeDeeMi really before Marla came and joined us in IT, is if you've ever tried to put a piece of software on an engineer's workstation, that's an adventure in of itself, because they will certainly clock cycle everything that you are doing. And one of the things we learned when HP calls something agentless, it truly is not agentless. What it means is it goes out, it installs the DeeDeeMi client, it does the scan, and then it deinstalls when it's done. So it's a temporary installation. It's really a better term for agentless. Now the good news is the engineers did clock what we were doing. We had to prove performance, and DeeDeeMi has been a very lightweight client compared to other things IT has put on systems, and so we've been hugely successful in getting it deployed and being able to do things like showback. If DeeDeeMi was a poor performer, we would not have achieved what we have done to date. Next question, do I understand that you upgraded your DeeDeeMi to VM servers?
DeeDeeMi is installed on a VM, yes.
And was that contrary or in support or supported by HP?
I did not see documentation from HP stating that we should be on a physical machine or on a virtual server, but it was in keeping with the previous installation on which DeeDeeMi was also on a virtual machine.
Okay. What was the overall time involved in the upgrade, test, design test, rollout, etc.?
I think it took about a month in total from start to finish.
Okay. Let's see. Here's someone who's sharing that we found out that installations under Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008 need to be done as administrator because the new user account policy from Windows, I can't see this whole question. I chopped it off, but it sounds like you need to do it as administrator.
Yeah, so sorry, we did do installations as administrators and run programs as administrators, and that seemed to work pretty well with the exception of that AutoPass licensing tool. Even running that as an administrator and logged in as an administrator did not allow that AutoPass license tool to open without the UACs being turned down. But yeah, I would recommend installing this as and running the applications as the administrator while you're doing the upgrade.
Okay. Do you have you updated connected scenarios for SCCM to Asset Manager, DeeDeeMi, or HP UCMDB? And I don't think we're running any of those products.
Yeah, no.
Not yet. We're actually looking at UCMDB now. Two reasons that I've been told that we want to pursue UCMDB is one, if we want to map dependencies between products, and that's something that DeeDeeMi will do for you. The second reason is if you want to maintain sort of a golden configuration of a server and then discover drift or changes against whatever that configuration standard is, that is the other reason you might do it. And we're looking at actually doing a pilot with server automation with that as well. Were there any performance concerns with selecting SQL Server over Oracle?
Nope.
Nope. And me personally have done Oracle and SQL Server in my career path, and I know there always has been a lot of thought about SQL Server. Can it perform as well as Oracle? And I would say it's come a long way, baby. And Mentor is not a huge transaction volume company to really exercise the upper ends of it, but I think SQL Server or Oracle would have done fine for Mentor. Do you recommend having the web service and web tier on the same server?
No, that was explicitly, okay, well, let me say this. I have run it that way, and I tested it that way, and I even had it in production that way at one point, and it worked totally fine. But it is explicitly against HP's requirements for the web tier and web server. They explicitly state that only on your development system should you ever have those two running on the same server. So long term, our plan would not be to have those two on the same machine.
So caveat emptor.
Mm-hmm.
Did you upgrade AM521 in place using the wizard, or did you export the data and structure into a new database and run the wizard? And I think you just showed us.
Yeah, it was exported into a new database, basically. Like I created a new database with nothing in it. It used the schema from 9.3, imported the data from 521, and then ran the wizard on it.
Okay. Oh, I found the rest of that advice. We found out installations under Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008 need to be done as administrator because the new user account policy from Windows, where are you, Herbert here, local admin rights is not enough. Okay. What did you use for unique identifiers for virtual servers with the DeeDeeMi discovery? MAC addresses aren't always unique with VM instances. Oh, so true.
That is so true and a great question. So when we're using serial for DeeDeeMi, I can give you the list. I can look that up after this meeting, but it's serial number. It's the combination of the MAC address and the machine name and assorted other things. And then in Asset Manager, we actually, Richard and I worked on a reconciliation key set that had serial number followed by MAC address, followed by machine name, and there may have been one other identifier in there. And actually, that really improved our reconciliation. And then since then, John Goldstein has, in this new 9.3 version, came up with a 5-key reconciliation set for Asset Manager that has really, really improved reconciliation even further. And I can get, do we have, are these being written down somewhere so that
yeah,
should I be writing these down? Okay. I have a lot of questions. Yeah, I can actually look up the what our actual key sets are for DeeDeeMi and for Asset Manager and send those out after this meeting.
So the answer is, it sounds like these products give you the ability to do a composite key using multiple fields to find that uniqueness.
Yeah, composite keys and like sequential keys.
Okay. Were the instructions provided by HP sufficient to accomplish the AM portion of the upgrade?
Yes, I think that I mean that's what we used, right? We didn't have to go to HP to ask them how to get this thing done. I think that for strictly installing Asset Manager and converting the database, I think that the documentation was sufficient. For things like the store and forward server, there was no documentation on it whatsoever, and that was a little bit frustrating. And for things like, well, I found that the documentation for 9.3 was really not built for Windows 2008 servers. The documentation really referred to, gosh, I forget which version of Windows it was referencing, but it made it so that the documentation didn't quite match the installation process, but I think it was enough to get us there. I mean, it could have been improved definitely, but yeah, I mean, we eventually got there only using the documentation. So.
Okay. Do you plan to implement the SACM, which is Service, Asset, and Configuration Management integration between Asset Manager, Service Manager, and UCMDB? I'll answer that. I would say it's on our roadmap probably later this year or earlier the following. One of the integrations that I'm looking at is trying to get desktop configurations inside of Service Manager, so as people open tickets, we can see the configurations of those systems, which would help the help desk process. This is a question, but I'm not sure what it refers to. The question is that working okay? And I think Asset Manager and everything's working okay, so we'll say yes. What type of single sign-on was implemented, NT Security or LDAP?
It's LDAP.
Okay. What is the purpose of using agents in DeeDeeMi if agentless actually installs its agent when it does the scan?
Because agentless scanning uninstalls the agent after it's done scanning.
But the purpose of using agents, at least as I remember understanding it, is that you save yourself the time of actually having to do an install and uninstall. That takes time every time you do it. And I think it seems like there was also some sort of log file or seed file left behind on the servers for incrementals. Richard, can you help me there? Is this Richard?
Yeah. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep. Actually, I got
Okay.
another IM here that says that permissions as well to do the install and deinstall have to be maintained.
And agents will allow you to upgrade the agent automatically.
Yeah, and I also believe then with the phone home because you guys have a highly mobile set of employees who aren't always on the network. When it's agentless, you have to that works best, as I understand it. It works best with for devices that are on the wire all the time. So when you're dealing with a mobile workforce, having an agent there that can phone home for when they actually get connected and VPN'd in, the agent works best in that environment as well.
So our preference was agents. It's really in the space of engineering where at times we had to go agentless, where they really wanted total control. Have you done any asset management activities with non-persistent clients, VMware? And I think we just described that.
Yep.
Let's see. I think we already answered this question about the upgrade. How much staff did you have to do this project?
Me.
And you probably had some system administration help?
Sorry?
You had some system administration help?
Yeah. John is the system administration guy, and I had, and we had a Windows Systems team that did the installation of the Microsoft SQL Server 2008, and they did the install of the operating systems and set up the VMs.
Okay. Question is, have you implemented the SAM best practices packages? If yes, any comments? Those are really in progress right now. Correct?
Yeah, we're still in development with those, fully understanding them.
Okay. One note from the audience says, be careful with SACM. So there you have it. Do you have the service request catalog integration set up between Service Manager, Asset Manager? How are the assets and Asset Manager synced with devices and Service Manager? We do not have that done yet, but that's on the roadmap. And then another comment was call home functionality with DeeDeeMi is one of the reasons you would do an agent. And I think we are at the end of our questions. We are also at the end of our hour.
Good timing.
All right. So I'd like to thank Marla and Richard with being with us today and sharing their experiences with upgrading to Asset Manager 9.3. Next time we will have, I'm going to do, I think, 2 different sessions with Meet the Developers, one with Service Manager and one with Asset Manager. And with that, I thank you for joining us. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.